Hi, I'm Janine Turner, founder of Constituting America. Welcome to our annual academic study entitled History Holds the Key to the Future. Or as Shakespeare says, what's past is prologue. This year's study is entitled The Genius of America, A Journey into Our Republic, a study on Alexis De Tocqueville's Democracy in America. It is always to the whole nation, in the name of the whole nation, that one speaks. Alexis de Tocqueville. This essay is based on Parliamentary Eloquence in the United States, Volume 2, Part 1, Chapter 21, and it's pages 472 through 476 of Democracy in America, University of Chicago Press. This essay is entitled Call Sometime When You Have No Class by Eric Wise. Modes of political behavior run along the grooves of the larger habits of the social organism. Call it culture, if you will. De Tocqueville, in his chapter on political eloquence in the United States, compares the European aristocratic mode to the American democratic mode. Before we examine de Tocqueville's discussion, two digressions. Eloquence conventionally means, quote, fluent or persuasive speaking, end quote, and is used today to indicate objective oratory talent. If now we say, quote, the congressman spoke eloquently, end quote, we tend to mean finely. But the origin of the word is the Latin e, for out as in exit, and loci, to speak. The French word is eloquence. Then the English word is borrowed from this mother language. In French, eloquence can also mean raw loquacity and volubility. I take de Tocqueville's meaning to be mainly the method of speaking out rather than the finer quality of it. In the 1986 hit comedy, Back to School, the protagonist Thornton Mellon, fumbling for words to ask his professor, who at least sounds European, out on a date, says, quote, call me sometime when you have no class, end quote. This joke is funny precisely because America, in the prohibition of titles of nobility, is, in more ways than one, a classless society. Few things show this more clearly than a common American method of fraud, which is to assume the air of European class structure to gain some advantage. A fine illustration of this comes from Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. After one fraud introduces himself to Jim as the Duke of Bilgewater, his companion ups the ante, quote, Bilgewater, I am the late Dauphin, end quote. Hilarity ensues as the duck and the dolphin carry out various fraudulent schemes as Jim and Huck make their lives in America great again by floating their way to Cairo and freedom, the essence of America that until then has eluded them both, Jim as a slave and Huck as a minor in the custody of a violent drunkard. Returning to our main discussion, de Tocqueville observes that in the European parliaments, a member of an assembly draws his station from the aristocratic structure. This creates a habit of subordination, which quietly informs a politician how to behave. Particularly, it causes him to subordinate to party claims rather than to the direct interest of those he represents and have elected him. He cares only a little about the loss of his seat because his sense of self and his worth is bound up in his station, which exists independent of his elected political life. For the most part, he says little of interest and has little interest in saying much. The American politician de Tocqueville describes has an entirely different view of himself. The American representative depends upon those who elected him for his status. He is self-made by virtue of his election to office and is unmade by the loss of his office. As a consequence, party is secondary to the American politician, and his outspokenness is directed towards impressing his constituents and towards fighting for his constituents' narrow, often openly selfish interest. The curiosity of the American politician about his constituents is perhaps only exceeded by his constituents' curiosity about him. According to De Tocqueville, quote, "The population of a district charges a citizen with taking part in the government of the state because he has conceived a very vast idea of his merit. Since men appear greater in proportion as they are surrounded by smaller objects, one may believe that the opinion held of the agent will be higher as talents are rarer among those he represents." End quote. In short, de Tocqueville's opinion of most American constituents is little higher than Mark Twain's view of the townspeople along the river who pay to see Jim painted blue and exhibited as a, quote, sick Arab, end quote, or to see the thoroughly fraudulent play, The Royal Nonsuch, produced by Bilgewater and the late Dauphin. It's not flattering. American electors, de Tocqueville says, expect that their representative will be an orator, and that he will speak not just on behalf of the country, but zealously on behalf of their interests. This is his eloquence and the essence of his outspokenness. Quote, "He will speak often if he can, and that, in case he is forced to refrain, he will strive at any rate to compress into his rare discourses an examination of all the great affairs of state, joined to an exposition of all the little grievances they themselves have to complain of," end quote, says de Tocqueville. Emphasis is my own. The words of the Frenchman wound, but it is hard to escape notice that such behavior is the epitome of today's more talented members of the House of Representatives. But all that de Tocqueville says is not insulting. He closes by noting the inferiority of the deliberations of aristocratic nations, which focus on, quote, particular items, end quote, and, quote, the rights of a particular class, end quote. Debates in the democratic assemblies of America somehow, through all the aforementioned defects, are more interesting than those of Europe. Quote, "I see nothing more admirable or more powerful than a great orator discussing great affairs within a democratic assembly, as there is never a class that has charged its representatives with asserting its interest. It is always to the whole nation, in the name of the whole nation, that one speaks. That enlarges thought and elevates language," end quote. From de Tocqueville's low estimation of American outspokenness comes high praise indeed. As the French say, c'est bon. This essay was written by Eric Wise. Eric Wise is a partner in the finance and restructuring group of King and Spalding, resident in the New York office.